Welcome to the GetRealWealth.com radio show, where wealth means a lot more than just building a second stream of income. Listen and learn how 70% of the millionaires in America used real estate to create a lifestyle that most people only dream about. A lifestyle that includes good health, family, romance, travel, charity, and all the other parts of a balanced life. Now, here is your host, real estate investor and mentor, Steve Davis.
Good afternoon and welcome to the GetRealWealth.com radio show. We're here Monday through Friday at 2 talking about getting into the 5%. We're studying really the 5% of Americans that retire successfully. 95% of Americans fail to retire successfully. They depend on the government or they're a burden on their kids just to survive, let alone thrive in retirement. And we're studying what they do. 70% of them own real estate. So our main financial focus on this show is real estate investing. Then we, of course, talk about the fact that just having money is not a quality lifestyle. You've got to have fitness, you've got to have your health, you've got to have your relationships, you've got to have romance, you've got to have charity, all the parts of a balanced life that come together to create a life worth living. And today we're going to start off by talking about the 401k trust. And what this is it sounds like I'm contradicting what I usually say, which 401ks and IRAs are literally epic failures for the average American. And they are. They literally don't save you taxes unless you fail financially. In other words, if you retire with high income, you're not in a lower tax bracket. You didn't save a thing. But if you fail and retire broke, yeah, they saved you some taxes. Who cares? You're broke. Being broke at retirement, having no income, I promise you, is not the goal. So why would you invest in something, put your money in something that only works if you fail financially? To me, it's ludicrous. But that is a rule, and there are exceptions. And generally, it's for people 50 and over. Now, some of you are going, well, I'm only 35, I don't need to listen to this show. Let me warn you of something. I never thought I'd be 55, but I am. And I don't like it. I joke about it, but it's true. Getting old sucks. Don't turn the show off. Keep listening. Because when you reach 50, you're going to want to use this technique. I guarantee it. And even some people younger, because they have high income jobs that they love, and they don't need the income from their real estate investing. They don't mind it going back to the 401k. But it's simply this. If you're a wholesaler or you're a flipper, you are self-employed. See, people think that wholesaling and flipping is investing. And I hear it on commercials. Learn how to invest in Houston real estate, how to flip single-family houses. That's not investing. It's self-employment. You buy, fix up, sell, spend the money. Buy, fix up, sell, spend the money. To get more money, you got to go buy, fix it. See, it's a job, a never-ending job. Same thing with wholesaling. So you're self-employed. But that's actually good news, because guess what you can do? You can set up a 401k of your own, 401k trust of your own in your business, which is the self-employment, either flipping or wholesaling. And this is really neat. I'm going to hit this. I'm almost going to the end of the conversation right now. Then we're going to come back and go lead up to it. But let's say you decide you're going to be a wholesaler, or you decide you're going to be a flipper. I think I'm going to focus on flipping because it's easier to understand. I don't want to have to say wholesaling and flipping, but it really works either way. So let's just talk about flipping. You're going to buy, fix up, and sell houses. On the average flip that I did last year, it was about $80,000 that I made per deal. So let's round that up to 100, because I can promise you this: I was the laziest, most ineffective, most inefficient flipper you've ever seen. I mean, I was literally doing this in my spare time because I was reading, constantly listening to CDs, and I didn't want to deal with it, but I wanted to make some money. So I was flipping these houses. I did not do it extremely effectively. I did not do it extremely efficiently, but it's still, $78,000, $80,000 per deal. I think someone who had done those deals, that had paid attention to the numbers, shopped the contractors, could have made 100 off each deal. So let's assume you make about 100 off each deal. What size houses are these? These were all, my deals were all between 150 and 220. 150 and 220. But these were exceptional situations with massive deferred maintenance or foreclosure or whatever. I generally think that flipping houses, to make that type of money, you've got to go up in value, up to probably 350 to around 450, we'll say. You could go a little bit higher than that, a little bit lower than that. But what I want you targeting is after purchase price and rehab and closing costs and holding costs. Those are extremely important to include. So many people, you go back to that house I talked about flipping last week, there were $11,000 worth of holding costs. So those are substantial. Make sure you include all of those in your calculation. So if it's a $450,000 house, you need to be all in at $350,000. Again, after purchase price, rehab, closing costs, and holding costs. So you've got $350,000 in it, you sell it, you make $100,000. Do that 2 times a year. 2 times a year. Just flip 2 houses a year, and you have made $200,000. Did you know that you can take $62,000 of that $200,000 and put it into your 401k trust, tax deferred? And you keep listening to the show when I have CPAs on, they'll back me up on this. The taxes are deferred till after you're dead if you do this right. And then hug your kids, teach them how to invest in real estate, and it'll be deferred till after they're dead, and so on, and so on, and so on. Because of the tax deferred situation, your interest is compounding on a larger amount of money. All right, we'll talk about that more when we come back from the break. This is the GetRealWealth.com radio show. I'm your host, Steve Davis. You're listening to AM 700 KSEV, the voice of Texas. Did you know that 70% of the millionaires in America used real estate as their main investment vehicle? You can and should have some real estate in your portfolio. This is Steve Davis, host of the GetRealWealth.com radio show. Starting with bad credit and no money at age 27, I began investing in real estate. By 30, I was retired. I will be explaining this at a free 2-hour introductory workshop this month. If you would like to attend, go to GetRealWealth.com. That's GetRealWealth.com. Thank you for listening. Welcome back to the GetRealWealth.com radio show. I'm your host, Steve Davis. We're talking about the 401k trust, setting one up inside your self-employment, making $200,000, flipping houses 1 year, and being able to put $62,000 into that 401k trust, tax deferred, towards your retirement. Now, the power of that is that after 2 years, you've got $24,000. You take 100 of that, or all of it, and invest passively in an apartment complex. These apartment complexes are making, when you add in the cash flow, 6, 12, 18%, and the refinance money, which can be anywhere from 50 to 150%. Yes, I've seen higher, but it's usually between 50 and 100%. Your rate of return is about 20%. So when you do that year after year, after year, after year, you go out in a 10-year look forward, you've accumulated $1.1 million in multifamily investments, generating an approximate $183,000 a year in after-tax net income. Then you can add your Social Security to it, whether that's 30 grand a year or, well, you know, my mom only, I don't know how low I should go. The lowest I've seen is about $20,000 a year, Social Security. The highest I've seen is about $45K a year in Social Security. But 183 plus even 20, that's $200,000 a year in retirement. Can you lead a quality lifestyle on 200 grand a year? The answer is absolutely. That's a pretty nice amount of money to be living off of in retirement. And that is almost 2 times as much as you would have if you didn't put the money in the 401k tax deferred. Almost 2 times as much. That's why, on occasion, and depending on your age, it is sometimes a good idea to use the 401k trust. But I still don't forget the original argument that you don't use them in the younger years. But remember, you will be 50 someday, if you're lucky. You will be 55, you will be 60, you will be 65. So make sure you listen to what we're saying here and understand how this can benefit you as you get older. The reason this came up today is the main CPA at Real Wealth Academy sent me an article, and I want to read this to you. I hope I read it well because it's longer, but it's important. It says, "Dear," and I'm not going to mention the financial planner's name. It's just a financial planner. It says, "I'm 58. For the first time ever, retirement seems real to me." That was what I was just describing. People think they're never going to be 58. The problem is I don't have any money. I make a lot, 200 grand a year at my job, but due to a large number of circumstances, I don't have any retirement assets. Divorce, business failure, etc. I'm so upset about the circumstances and my lack of savings that I almost feel paralyzed. I know I need to do something, but I'm literally too embarrassed to go to a financial planner. I think I've ruined my financial life. Do you agree? Well, the answer to this individual's name was Richard, who wrote that note I just read. He says, "I have bad news for you. A successful retirement is entirely possible." You didn't read that wrong. The numbers actually work. The bad news is it will require significant changes and a well-executed plan. He goes on to talk about, and I'll summarize it, reducing your quality of lifestyle. What's that mean? Save more. Stop spending. Stop buying nicer cars. Stop buying a nicer home. Lower your quality of lifestyle. Lower your goals now so that you can live better when you're old and retired. See, I can't even say that without getting a little bit upset about it. Why would you trade leading a high-quality lifestyle now for this hoped-for high-quality lifestyle in the future? That is a odd trade to me because, unfortunately, 36% of us are going to die by 65. We're never even going to see retirement. And they're trading off. They're scrimping, they're saving, they're not going on that cruise they wanted to go on that means so much to them. They're not going to Greece and walking the beaches of Greece that means so much to them. They're not doing the things that bring them joy They're putting it off. Then he talks about other ways, almost to the point of talking about, cutting coupons. Oh my God. Stop cutting coupons and go read a book during that time period on how to build wealth for yourself and your family. Does that make sense? Ludicrous. People thinking they're going to save their way to retirement. They're going to scrimp, lower their quality of lifestyle. So to me, this article offers no solution, no legitimate solution whatsoever. Save better. Spend smarter. Don't miss out. But that is missing out. It's missing out on the good things in life when you're young to hopefully have the good things when you're old. What that is it's a low expectation. You're setting low expectations for your life. My sales pitch is raise your expectations to live well now and set up passive streams of income to help you do so. And by default, your retirement is taken care of. Does that make sense? Think about it. If you build passive streams of income now when you're young, it improves your quality of lifestyle, doesn't it? And do you have to worry about retirement anymore? No. You've solved both problems at the same time. So, like all financial planners, they offer little, if any, usable advice. And I know I'm upsetting the financial planners, but where in there, in this article, and I promise you it's not here, did he say, go make more money? Go buy some income-producing assets. Make more money. No. Scrimp and save. That's all they got. Scrimp and save. Give me your money. Which is essentially what they're saying. Let me manage your money. Save more. Give it to me so that I get commission off of it. Make sense? No wonder they're telling people this. It doesn't work. You're still running into that circumstance of no matter how much money you save, you're praying you die before you run out of money the minute you retire. You're praying you die before you run out of money. Not a good way to live. So we will talk more about these self-employed 401k trusts as we go along, week after week, month after month. You'll get to meet this guy, by the way. The gentleman who sent me all this information is the official CPA for Real Wealth Academy. I'm not going to give you his name today, but I will March 26th at our grand opening where he will be introduced. He is literally, if not the only, one of the only CPAs in America that's doing this for his clients on a regular, recurring basis and has mastered it. He's a master of this. In fact, I have to cut down his emails just to be able to talk to you on the radio. He sent me, I want to say 5 of them today, 6 maybe, explaining this in different ways. He's amazing. He really wants people to understand what this is because it is so life-changing. When you can set up a 401k trust and make twice as much money as if you didn't have it, it's almost a no-brainer. Powerful tool. We will continue to talk about it, and then I'll introduce him at the grand opening, March 26th. Okay, let's get into some listener questions, because these will take me through some real estate advice in a very efficient way today, because I obviously goofed up on something on one of last week's shows where I talked about real estate is a powerful tool because it makes money in both the up and down markets. And I got 4 emails with the exact same question. What happens if there's a collapse? Well, if I had done my job correctly, they would have understood. So obviously I went too fast through it, or I said something wrong. So I'm going to talk about that from this guy's question, Justin. He says, history doesn't repeat itself, but it does often rhymes. I think that's a misspelling or a spell check or something like that. The first thing I want to say, Justin, is history does repeat itself. It's not if we're going to have another 2008. It's when are we going to have another 2008. Nobody knows that answer, but it will occur again. Usually it's about every 20 years. So he goes on to ask, now looking for opinions or when you think the next downturn will happen. Well, Justin, I'm not a speculator. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not being sarcastic. I'm trying to get this across to you that nobody knows. And anyone who says they do is delusional or just lying. I'm not sure. Probably just delusional. Because when you see these famous guys that say, I predicted 2008 and 2006, guess what? They got lucky. A lot of people predicted it in 2006. They just advertised it. Does that make sense? It's like people who get into the stock market and they succeed for 5 years and they think they got it made. They're like, man, I'm smarter than the stock market. I'm rocking. I'm averaging 20% rate of return for 5 years, and in the sixth year they lose 20%. And they go, well, that's weird. I did the same thing I did the last 5 years. I know, it was just a fluke. I'll do it another year. They lose 10% the next year, 15% the next. And about 4 years later, they go, I just figured it out. I was just lucky the first 5 years. And that's what it is, because it is speculation. There's only one way to succeed in speculation. That is luck. Personally, I'm not going to run my life off of luck. I want stuff I can control. All right, this is the GetRealWealth.com radio show. I'm your host, Steve Davis. If you've got a question for me, you can email me at asksteve@GetRealWealth.com. Asksteve@GetRealWealth.com. You're listening to AM 700 KSEV, the voice of Texas. Did you know that 95% of Americans fail to retire by age 65? On the GetRealWealth.com radio show, we study what the 5% who are successful are doing. 70% of them own real estate. Listen and learn how you can use real estate to build wealth and passive income. Listen to the GetRealWealth.com radio show every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. right here on The Answer, AM 1070 KNTH. Welcome back to the GetRealWealth.com radio show. I'm your host, Steve Davis. If you've got a question for me, you can email me right now. AskSteve@GetRealWealth.com. AskSteve@GetRealWealth.com. So Justin goes on to ask the rest of his question, which is, were you investing around the 2008 crash, and what were your experiences, things you learned, and lessons you can impart? Yes, I was actually in it during the 80s garbage too, but the 2008 collapse, the Great Recession, I was smack in the middle of it. Not sure how many houses I had. I had about 11 apartment complexes and maybe at the time 30 or 40 houses, I'm not sure. But let's just talk about the houses. It's going to work about the same for apartments, except that the apartments cash flow dropped, because when we refinanced those things, we ended up having a higher interest rate. But I didn't lose any apartment complexes or anything like that. It was when people say the crash came and I lost all my real estate, let me tell you something. They did something wrong. In other words, you're not going to ever hear somebody, unfortunately, walk up to you and go, man, I screwed that up. I did everything wrong. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have a mentor. I just kind of, trial and error it. What a dummy. I lost all my property in 2008. They're not going to say that. What they're going to say is, oh, that crash got me, man. I was rocking and rolling, doing everything right. And then boom, Obama crashed it. And of course they're going to blame Obama, even though he'd been in office, a month? But anyway, let's go back to the single family houses. Let's say that I had, we'll just say 20 houses, even though it was more than that. We had 20 houses, and let's say that the average, let me do this on the calculator, was $180,000 times 20. That's $3.6 million worth of real estate. And boom, it goes down in value $600,000. We're talking almost 20%. Some areas went down more than that. Is that right? Let's see, times 0.8. Yeah, that's about right. That's a little over 20%. Boom, just crashes. Values drop 20%. Do I care? Sure. But do I really? Does it affect me? No, not in the least. In fact, my rents not only stayed the same, they went up. Why? Because people were losing their homes and they needed to rent. Now, the question came up today on a phone call. Guy goes, well, didn't some of your renters lose their jobs? Didn't they have to move out? Yeah, 3 or 4 of them did. But because there were so many other people wanting to move in, I never lost a single mortgage payment. I was moving people out on the 15th and moving people in on the 1st. Before I had to make my mortgage payment, I was collecting another security deposit and the first month's rent. So with my mortgages, which are all about $400 a month, and I'm bringing in $1,500 security deposit and $1,500 first month's rent, I'm bringing in $3,000. I have to spend $400 on a mortgage. Not a bad deal. So not only did they continue to cash flow, the cash flow went up because the rents went up. But guess what? Real estate is now on sale. Because were mine the only houses that went down in value? No, everybody's went down in value. And all these foreclosures are now on the market. Where in an up market, I average about $18,000 total out of pocket for every single family house I do. In a down market, it's probably $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 average. Many zero down, many $12,000 down, but all of them average out to about $6,000 down. How many houses can you buy for $6,000 down? How many can you buy for zero down? You see why we love the down market? It's where we get rich. It's where you get rich. So if you're wise, you'll be like me, praying for what? Another down market. We love it. And the reason this is so powerful is because speculators do not sleep well. None of them. I'm talking about people who own gold, people who own stocks. They don't sleep well because they're constantly trying to figure out when the next crash is. They're scared to death of the next crash. And they lie to themselves and say, oh, I'll predict it. I'll pull my money out right before the crash. You're not going to do that. You don't have a crystal ball. Magic doesn't exist, sorry. You can't do it. It will never work. And when the crash comes, the people with gold, silver, stocks get freaking slaughtered. Slaughtered. Those of us with real estate ride merrily along. Who cares? You look at the apartments. Let's say 11 apartments, $10 million apiece, $110 million. Boom, it dropped to $80 million. Do I care? No. Because they still what? Cash flow. And then what did I do during that time period? Keep buying real estate. More and more and more and more. And again, here's a fear. Well, Steve, you must have had a huge cash reserve to be able to do that. Absolutely not. Because remember, what did I just tell you? The down payments dropped by 60, 70%. Instead of $18,000 a deal, I'm only putting $6,000 out. See why we love the down market? and see why it allows you to sleep peacefully? Because you're not worried about the down market. See, you deserve that type of peace of mind, but the only way you're going to get it is with an investment like real estate that makes money in both the up and down markets. Okay, let's go to the next question. Rental property. This is Scott. Inherited tenant situation that I have not experienced and have never heard of this specific situation before. Inherited a tenant that was 3 months behind on rent, has no job. Had a very clear and frank conversation with the tenant after I purchased the property, and they said they could not pay rent and would have to move out. Oh, this is a funny story. Well, it's not funny to this guy. But he actually let the guy leave his furniture and personal items in the house. The guy has turned off the electricity, so he's abandoned the property. But the stuff is still in there. And he doesn't want to be a mean person and just go throw it all away or put it in storage where the guy can, never afford to pay the storage to get it out. He's trying to be a nice guy. And I applaud him for that. But at the same time, you've got to understand your real estate is not your charity. You take the profit from your real estate and give some of it to charity. That's charity. Don't use your real estate as charity. That's your business. So here's what I explained to him. The first thing you do, and this goes for any eviction or suspected eviction. In other words, it's the 4th of the month and you haven't received your rent and you're filing for eviction. What you want to do is contact the judge's office that will be handling the eviction if it comes to that. Ask about their process for such a situation. And each judge, I know it's not supposed to be this way, and I'm not trying to irritate any judges out there, but each judge has idiosyncrasies, and they like it done a certain way. Some judges are pro-tenant, some judges are pro-landlord. Shouldn't be that way, but that's humans, because judges are humans. We put them on a pedestal, but they're still human. But I can tell you this, in my 27 years of dealing with them, every single one of them told me exactly what they expected in advance. And guess what I did? Delivered exactly what they expected. And this is going to drive people nuts. I've only been to eviction court once in 30 years. One time. And it wasn't even a tenant I put in. But anyway, I would call them and say, hey, if this comes down to eviction, what am I supposed to do? Well, back in the day, they would fax it to me. Now they email it to you, the eviction package. And they tell you exactly step by step what that judge expects. They literally tell you what the judge expects. Now, if you don't feel confident after talking to the judge's office, which I've never had a problem with the judge's office, then you call an attorney. Then and only then. Then you start having expenses. I don't know what an eviction costs because, like I said, if you go with an attorney, I don't know what it costs because I've never had to do one, because I screen the daylights out of my tenants. But that's the path you've got to take. The takeaway from that answer is, 1, your real estate is not charity. 2, call the judge's office and find out exactly what it's going to take to get them out. They will tell you. Okay, we're going to go to break. This is the GetRealWealth.com radio show. I'm your host, Steve Davis. You're listening to AM 700 KSEV, the voice of Texas.
Did you
you know that 95% of Americans fail to retire by age 65 and 36% are dead? The good news is that here at the GetRealWealth.com radio show, we know what the other 5% are doing. 70% of them own real estate. We are a mentoring group for new and experienced real estate investors. We will show you how to build a second stream of income that will allow you to retire at any age. I will be explaining this at a free 2-hour introductory workshop this month. If you would like to attend, please go to GetRealWealth.com. That's GetRealWealth.com. Welcome back to the GetRealWealth.com radio show. I'm your host, Steve Davis. My email is open to you really 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if you get home and you're chatting with your spouse or your significant other and you come up with something that you're afraid of or I didn't address or doesn't make sense to you, those are my favorites. When somebody emails me and says, hey, you said this. That doesn't make sense. Why'd you say that? Then it makes me a better host because the next time I talk on that subject, I'll remember to add that to it. So email me at asksteve@getrealwealth.com, asksteve@getrealwealth.com. Okay, the next question, this is from Daryl. What areas of the home are you most concerned with before negotiating with sellers or making an offer? Now, this is an interesting question, because it kind of implies that he thinks certain parts of the house are more important than others. But what I learned, and this comes from Brian Tracy, everything matters. Now, that doesn't seem too profound when I say it, but I want you to think about this. When you go to someone's office, and it's the first time you're there, and the decor is 20, 30 years old, is that impressive? Or do you kind of go, they haven't remodeled in 30 years? Maybe they're not doing so well financially. Everything matters. Every single thing. The way you dress. And I'm not talking about dressing up in a suit or anything like that. I'm talking about just clean, well put together, good posture, staring people in the eye when you talk to them, a firm handshake. All those things matter. It's the same in a piece of real estate. Everything matters. Cracks in the trim, chipped paint, handprints, everything matters. So Daryl, what you want to do is you really need to be concerned with everything that is in need of repair. Take a holistic approach and get a bid for everything so you know what you are looking at. After you do this a few times, you can eyeball it yourself for an estimate. But I took a contractor to my first few negotiations so I knew the exact number. They generally charged me between $50 and $75, and this was way back. It may be $100, $125 now. This is the only expense that I had as a wholesaler, was paying the contractor to come give me a bid in case I didn't get the deal. Now, if I got the deal, he didn't charge me for the bid. But I did that, I think, 4 or 5 times, so we'll say about $500. And by having it done 4 or 5 times, I could then go in and eyeball it and go, ooh, this is a $30,000 rehab, this is a $40,000, and I'm always going high, by the way. Always go high, and then negotiate from the high number. Then, when the contractor comes in, I go, this is a $40,000 rehab, and he goes, no, it's not, it's $33,000. I win. That's another $7,000 profit for me, but you've always got to go high when you're eyeballing. If you have the contractor there, go with the real number. So I then began negotiating that point. I got the contractor. By the way, how to get the contractor? From joining a real estate investor group, just like ours. That's the best place to find contractors because they're used to working with investors, and they know the difference between an ego-based owner-occupant and a not ego-based investor. Those are the two differences. An investor is not A good investor. There are ego-based investors that overbuild, over-update their properties. That happens. But a good investor, his ego or her ego is not attached to that property. Therefore, their rehab is just to the neighborhood standard. The neighborhood standard. You don't want to go above that because you're not going to get more money for it. Just because you put in crown molding, hardwood floors, and granite in a neighborhood that has no crown molding, no hardwood floors, and no granite. You know, the average comparable sale is the average comparable sale. So that's how you do it. I definitely think that was probably the best 500, one of the best, because some of the books and CDs I bought were life-changing. But one of the best $500 I ever spent was dragging a contractor with me to teach me how to bid these houses. Okay. Next one comes from Tyler. I'm saving up for a down payment and looking forward to buying my first rental. How was your experience and when did you start? Errors and solutions, and lastly, worries. Now, this is one of my favorite questions. I really like all these questions because I'm kind of picking them out of dozens. So I always pick my favorites. So I guess I should stop saying this is one of my favorites. Here's what I had. I had a great first experience. Why? Because I had a mentor that showed me how to do it right the first time. Then I just cookie cut the rest. My advice to Taylor, get a mentor and jump in. When you get up to $5,000 or $10,000 in passive income, your life is totally different. Financial freedom is the goal, and there's no better way than real estate, was the reply that I sent him. So what you don't want to do is go out there and buy real estate on your own. I know this is a huge sales pitch for our company, but it is the truth. Because have you ever burnt your hand on the stove or electrocuted yourself in an outlet? I'm proud to say I've done both of those things. I think I've electrocuted myself multiple times. You don't want to go back there, do you? See, if you do your first real estate deal wrong, what's going to happen? You're not going to want to do it again. And you're going to be scared. And you're going to lose self-confidence. You can't let that happen. Make sure, if not us, you join some real estate investor group where you get a mentor and they walk you through your first few deals. Walk you through your first few deals. Get up on your feet. Know what you're doing. Don't make mistakes, because, like I said, you burn yourself on your first deal, guess what? You probably will never do another deal, or you'll back off for months or years before you get back on the horse. Okay, this is from a friend of mine on Bigger Pockets. Her name is Bella. She's from Connecticut. And by the way, if you don't know what Bigger Pockets is, it's a forum for real estate investors. Check out biggerpockets.com. He says, as I'm browsing through and reading the different topics, I keep seeing pros mention if the deal is good enough. New wholesalers should have no problem with getting good cash buyers on their list. What exactly is a good deal? Obviously, it has to be fair for the seller and reasonable for the buyer. But what components make a deal good? Well, this is one of the most challenging questions I get, because this girl is going about it backwards. And I've already talked to her. We're talking by phone this afternoon. She's going about it backwards. You don't look for good deals. You look for what your investors want. Now, some of you are going, well, isn't it good deals? It is, but everybody defines that differently because of their strategy. So what she needs to do, as a wholesaler, you build your buyer's list before you start finding deals. Talk to each person on your buyer's list and ask them what a good deal is. And if she's got 30 people on her buyer's list, guess what she's going to get? 30 slightly different answers. But the reason I was so effective as a wholesaler was because I asked them, I go, what do you like? They go, I like A, B, C, and E. Guess what I went out and looked for? A, B, C, and E. Then I brought the ABC&E style deal back to them and said, here it is, and they bought it every time. My claim to fame is I never, except for one time where a seller lied to me about, God, it's been so long I don't even remember what it was. I want to say it was something to do with the foundation. But anyway, every single wholesale deal I ever got under contract, I was able to sell it because I was a member of a real estate investor group with hundreds of other real estate investors that all wanted the deals that I was looking for. But I knew my list of 35 people, I knew exactly what each of them wanted. And all I did was just go find it. It's kind of like if you're a car salesman and a lady walks in and says, I want a red Camry with black leather interior. Do you go show her the yellow Camry? No. You go show her the red Camry with black interior and ask her to buy it. And she probably does. It's the same thing with wholesaling. I went on to explain to her that for me, I want to pick up 10% or more equity and 15% cash on cash or more. I stay in the $150,000 to $220,000 price range in Greater Houston. I find deals like this every week. So there's the answer to that. If you're wholesaling, remember, you got to line up you got to join a group of real estate investors so you have at least 30, 35, 40 would be best names of people that want to buy investment real estate. Get them to tell you exactly what they want and then go find it. Okay, this has been the GetRealWealth.com radio show. I'm your host, Steve Davis. You can email me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at AskSteve@GetRealWealth.com. This is AM 700 KSEV, the voice of Texas.
This has been the GetRealWealth.com radio show. Please remember that this show is for entertainment purposes only and should not be construed as legal, tax, or investing advice. Always get a professional opinion before making any investment decision. To find out about the mentoring and consulting at Real Wealth Academy, visit GetRealWealth.com and attend one of our free introductory workshops on real estate investing. That's GetRealWealth.com. Thanks for listening and have a great rest of your day.